We live in a different world today. The threats look different. In some cases, fragility is still a factor, but it is largely a factor that will lead to either a costly humanitarian crisis, and in some cases, operating in safe haven spaces for radical jihadists to threaten us here at home. So the concept remains true. How it's applied is what has changed, because I think the context, and in that context, no matter how much even with these reductions that are proposed before you, we would still be the single largest foreign aid donor on the planet by multiples. I mean, no one even comes close. I think Germany was second, if I recall the last time I checked, and it's not even close. That remains the case. What we have to do now is apply that soft power to the places where it matters most to our national interests and to the programs that can make the biggest difference, the biggest impact in furthering our national interests.
Patriots, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into a conversation that exposes the deep rot in D.C. and the ongoing sellout of America's priorities. Senator Mitch McConnell and Marco Rubio just had a chat, a strategic policy discussion, about cutting foreign aid and what it really costs to avoid war. Now, at first glance, it might sound like a reasonable debate, but I'm telling you right now, underneath the surface, this isn't just about budgets or soft power. It's about a government that has forgotten who it serves and what its job really is, to protect and prioritize the American people first. Let's break this down. Senator McConnell opens with a history lesson, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, talking about the massive portions of our GDP that were dedicated to war. And sure, he's not wrong. War is expensive. But here's where he loses me. Instead of standing firm and demanding that we stop handing out blank checks to the rest of the world, Mitch jumps into this romanticized defense of soft power, a concept that basically means giving foreign countries aid, cash, resources, training, and influence, all in the hope that they'll like us more and not side with our enemies. Let me say it plain and simple. That strategy has failed us. We've spent trillions trying to bribe loyalty, and what do we have to show for it? Countries that spit in our face, burn our flag, and then run right into the open arms of China or Russia the second we don't send another suitcase of taxpayer cash. McConnell says, you get a lot of friends for not much money. Really? Ask the Americans who are drowning in inflation, whose cities are crumbling, whose veterans are living on the streets while our so-called leaders are worried about maintaining power in Burma. Now let's shift to Senator Marco Rubio.
You're up.
Welcome, Mr. Secretary. Obviously, there are two ways to prevent war and to maintain America's position in the world. Hard power, soft power. Over my years here, the people that have spoken mostly about the importance of soft power have been generals who know the cost of war. So we're talking about saving money, and I'm all for that. Let's take a look at what it costs to have an actual war. 37% of our GDP in World War II spent on defense, 13% in Korea, 9% in Vietnam. The Reagan buildup, about 6% of GDP. It worked. They didn't want to mess with us because they knew how strong we were going to be. And an equal partner, much less costly, is the soft power side. I think, I don't care what you call it or how you reorganize, but the basic functions that soft power provides are extremely important. You get a lot of friends for not much money. And we're being outmaneuvered, as you well know, in country after country after country by the People's Republic of China, who are effectively playing in ways that are more effective than we are. So if you can figure out how to way to reorganize it and call it whatever you will, that role is extremely important. How are foreigners looking at us right now? I think they think we're losing interest. The previous administration didn't have a single budget for defense that even kept up with inflation, and unfortunately, because of the continuing resolution this year, it looks like more of the same. So it strikes me, no matter how well the tariffs, for example, work out, that the perception at the beginning of this administration is that we want to fight with our allies and figure out some way to make an agreement with our enemies, which brings me to Ukraine. And I think the America that I believe in, and most of us believe in, would find no equivalence between the Russians and the Ukrainians. And so I'm hoping as this administration moves forward, it doesn't end up not facing the actual enemies we have now, North Korea, China, Russia, Iran's proxies, by working with our allies to stand up to them. Just to take a specific example of how soft power makes a difference, look at a country like Burma that you've had an interest in, and I have too over the years. Horrible place run by despicable people. Lots of storms and problems of one kind or another. The Chinese are in there just operating effectively. And we, because of not honoring contracts and some of the other things that we were doing to try to be helpful, just completely getting outmaneuvered. So, having had to endure that, I'd be interested in your observations about what you think about soft power and how important it is to this country's future.
Sure. I mean, first of all, I think soft power has the Department of State ultimately is a soft power entity. I mean, it's the Department of Peace. The Department of War is the Department of Defense. Our job is to try to prevent them. And so I do think that the model you've outlined, especially during the Cold War, was quite useful because during that time, that model served to keep societies from collapsing and becoming susceptible to Marxist regimes taking them over. That was the biggest fear during the Cold War, was that governments with high levels of poverty would be attracted to a Marxist revolution that would overthrow an allied government and create another satellite state for the Soviet Union. We live in a different world today. The threats look different. In some cases, fragility is still a factor, but it is largely a factor that will lead to either a costly humanitarian crisis and in some cases, operating in safe haven spaces for radical jihadists to threaten us here at home. So the concept remains true. How it's applied is what has changed, because I think the context, and in that context, no matter how much even with these reductions that are proposed before you, we would still be the single largest foreign aid donor on the planet by multiples. I mean, no one even comes close. I think Germany was second, if I recall the last time I checked, and it's not even close. That remains the case. What we have to do now is apply that soft power to the places where it matters most to our national interests and to the programs that can make the biggest difference, the biggest impact in furthering our national interests. I think it's possible to both be a humanitarian and at the same time further the national interests. And there are cases where perhaps there isn't going to be a national interest argument. We just do it because we don't want people to die, or we want to help alleviate suffering. The case of Burma is an example. It wasn't just a reduction in aid because we had teams on the ground. It was actual local authorities that prevented us from getting involved or allowing certain aid to be distributed because they were in the middle of their own conflicts internally in the midst of it. So some of these environments where we're trying to deliver aid are quite challenging. Even if we provide the money, we struggle to get it to the recipients because of some local impediment on the ground that could include, for example, in the case of Haiti, armed gangs that will hijack humanitarian shipments and steal them. Just steal them as soon as they come into the country. So it's not that we care less about Haiti, but I certainly don't think foreign aid should be going into the hands of a Haitian gang and being stolen from the people that we're intending to benefit.
He starts strong, talking about the Department of State as a Department of Peace, how soft power helped prevent Marxist revolutions during the Cold War, and how we must remain the world's largest donor of foreign aid. And he does hit on something important, that we need to be smart about where we use aid, not just throwing it around. But even Rubio dances around the real problem. We don't need to be the world's largest donor anymore. That's not a badge of honor. That's a sign of insanity. We have people in this country struggling to buy eggs, to pay their rent, and to keep their small businesses alive while we're funding humanitarian efforts in Haiti that end up in the hands of violent gangs? You heard that right. Rubio himself admitted that in Haiti, gangs are hijacking the humanitarian aid we're sending. That's not foreign diplomacy. That's foreign dysfunction. And it's our money being used to prop it up. Rubio then turns around and says, even with these proposed reductions, we'd still be the single largest donor. And he says it like that's supposed to be comforting. It's not. It's infuriating. Here's what they won't say out loud, folks. This isn't about preventing war. This is about preserving the DC status quo. This is about politicians addicted to playing world police, sending our money and our influence overseas, while the country that actually pays for it, you and me, gets left behind. They talk about Ukraine, about China, about Iran, and sure, those are real threats. But let me ask you, how do you deter enemies if your own house is falling apart? If your borders are wide open, your military is focused on pronouns, your police are underfunded, and your culture is in freefall? You don't. You get laughed at. McConnell says we're being outmaneuvered by China in country after country. Well, yeah, Mitch. That's because China doesn't give aid based on feelings. They make deals that benefit their bottom line, while we hand out billions with no strings attached and act surprised when those countries stab us in the back. It's not just poor policy, it's national suicide. So what should we be doing instead? We should cut off the gravy train. No more blank checks to nations who don't respect us, don't share our values, and don't lift a finger to help us when we're in need. We should bring our foreign aid home and reinvest it into border security, veteran care, infrastructure rebuilding, energy independence, school choice and education reform, small business relief, American manufacturing. We should stop treating foreign policy like a charity auction and start treating it like the strategic national interest operation it's supposed to be. And we must hold our leaders accountable. Yes, even the ones in our own party, when they start talking like globalists instead of patriots. Look, I'm not saying we become isolationists, but we do need to get real about what time it is. We are at a tipping point. Either we keep bleeding money and influence to corrupt regimes and hollow international organizations, or we take back our power and put America first. Not in some rhetorical sense, but in our budgets, our policies, our foreign aid, and our military strategy. This conversation between McConnell and Rubio was polite. It was civil. It was diplomatic. But you know what it wasn't? It wasn't honest. Because if they were being honest, they'd say this: America is in trouble. And we can't save the world if we can't even save ourselves. So to every patriot watching, let this be your wake-up call. Pay attention to where your money's going. Pay attention to who's defending American interests and who's just reciting talking points from the foreign policy swamp. And never forget, we're not just fighting for votes. We're fighting for the survival of this republic. This is Right View Nation, where we say what others won't, and we fight for the truth without apology. Like, share, subscribe, and most of all, stand up for America. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.